Hello everyone, I'm Hajat Dalwal. I'm with the Windows commercial team at Microsoft. I am super excited. I got an opportunity to meet with one of our featured partners, partner of the year actually. And let me introduce you, Denis from Mobile Mentor.
Thank you, Hajat.
Welcome,
Pleasure
Denis.
to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Please let everyone know who you are, what you do, and your company and all that stuff.
Denis O'Shea is my name. I'm the founder and CEO of Mobile Mentor. We've been in business 19 years. Been a Microsoft partner, I think 6 or 7 years. And we've got an interesting story in that we used to compete against Microsoft.
Oh my God.
In the endpoint space. And Microsoft came to us in 2015 or 16.
Okay.
And said, hey, we'd like Mobile Mentor to become a Microsoft partner and help us take this immature product called Intune to market.
Okay.
And help us deploy it. And we're like, okay, that's a really interesting proposition.
So they were like, come work with us.
Yeah, because we used to do a lot of work with VMware, AirWatch and Citrix
I see.
Mobile Iron and all those platforms. And Microsoft said, well, you've got all these customers, help us deploy Intune. And so that was the beginning of an amazing journey. And my engineers were not happy, being completely honest.
Yeah.
Because Intune was such an immature product at the time.
Right.
But I said yes because I could see the power of the
You could see the future, right?
See the future, yeah. The future of the product, but the partnership potential with Microsoft was,
tremendous.
we could see that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, how did you get the Partner of the Year award? What?
Well, we really climbed into that whole journey with Intune and Microsoft. And I personally moved to the US to set up our business here and form the partnership with Microsoft. Previously, I was living in New Zealand, which is the coolest country in the world. But I could see that, moving to the US and being here and working with Microsoft was going to take us to the next level.
Okay.
And so we moved here, my family and I, and we really started to build up the partnership. Literally, I knew nobody in Microsoft when I moved to the US.
Oh, wow.
Not a single person. But it's been an extraordinary journey to do lots of work with Intune. And with lots of great customers, and then get to know lots of people in Microsoft, and then to win Partner of the Year. It's been one hell of a journey.
So it's kind of like you took a risk, but it was calculated risk. You knew the future was coming with Intune and Windows 11 and all those things, right?
I think we could see. I got invited by Microsoft to Inspire 2017.
Oh, I see, yeah.
I was in the room when Satya announced Windows 365.
Oh.
And that was kind of like being in the room today when he talked about CoPilot.
Yes.
And, it's almost overwhelming. You could see there was a game-changing strategy about to open up. And it was clear to me that Microsoft applications were going to land on every single endpoint, which meant they would all need to be secure, managed,
absolutely,
have compliance, and all the things. And I could see that, oh my God, the opportunity for consolidated endpoint management at scale in enterprise. There's a whole new world opening up here.
Right. So the light bulb.
Yeah, big time.
I want to go back a little bit. So you said you're from New Zealand. Is it true that
I'm originally from Ireland?
Okay.
But I spent 25 years in New Zealand, so I talk funny. And now I live in Tennessee, so I talk even funnier.
So is it true that they say there's more sheep in New Zealand than there are people?
It's about 40-to-1 ratio.
Oh my God.
Yeah, 40-to-1. Depending on the price of lamb, it fluctuates up and down.
Okay.
Like 20-to-1 or 40-to-1.
Price of lamb.
Yeah, that's our commodity.
That's awesome. All right, so your company, what do you do for your customers? What are they reaching out to you for? What are they asking you that they need support for? The projects that they're working on, or they need?
I would say most inbound leads are assistance to do a migration.
Okay.
That's often the start of the conversation.
Migration from?
From a CCM or from AirWatch or Mobile Iron or Jamf to Intune.
To Intune.
Yeah, that's the most common problem. And we produce a ton of content that's optimized for SEO. So we've got about 500 search terms that are on page 1 of Google related to Intune specifically.
Okay.
So we've been producing Intune related content for about 6 years.
Fantastic.
Or maybe 7. And so we've got videos, podcasts, white papers, webinars, blogs, all that. So when customers go searching and go, how do I get off Jamf and go to Intune? They find us, okay? And then they fill out a form and they download a white paper or a migration guide or something.
Sure.
And that's the beginning of a conversation.
Sure.
And the conversation is usually around, oh, we've got a Jamf contract renewal in 9 months' time. We don't want to renew.
Right.
Or we've got an AirWatch renewal, or we're, our last SCCM engineer has just retired.
Yes.
Or is about to retire.
We lost our skills and stuff like that, right?
And we know we need to go Intune.
Right.
Or in some cases, it's like we're paying for Jamf and we're paying for AirWatch and we've got Microsoft 365. We've got 3 of these things. Which one should we consolidate on?
Right.
That's often the start of the journey.
Okay.
The other start is the Microsoft Endpoint workshop.
Okay.
That's been an extraordinarily good program. I think we did 72 endpoint workshops last year. The ones that were,
So you created your own workshop?
No, this is the Microsoft
Okay,
one.
I see.
The EMW, the Endpoint Management Workshop.
Yeah.
We created some IP around it.
Mm-hmm.
So at the start, we do an assessment.
Okay.
And we gather a lot of information from the customer. Then we run the workshop and follow the Microsoft prescribed program.
Okay.
And then at the end, we come in and we show the customer a roadmap on how they would now go from where they are today to getting fully deployed on Intune.
Okay.
Getting all their desktops, laptops, tablets, smartphones, BYO devices, everything on Intune, and going fully Azure AD joined,
right,
native Intune, and what that would look like as a journey.
Okay.
And we lay that out for them, and we have a good conversation then around how long that would realistically take them with their current IT team.
Okay.
And the skills they've got, any prior experience they have, knowledge they've got, competing priorities, all the other things that factor into it. And that conversation would then lead usually to some kind of engagement where they say, if we do this on our own and we have to figure out every piece of the journey.
X number of hours.
No, it's years. This is like
years.
A 5 or 6 year journey for most enterprises.
True.
To get this fully deployed.
So you can bring that down.
We typically can bring it down to about 3. So we'll typically be able to cut it in half by helping them with it.
Okay.
And we've done 350 of these now. And so we're able to help them by helping avoid the common mistakes.
Okay.
And leverage all the shortcuts and all the automations and PowerShell scripts and documentation and the knowledge.
Fantastic.
And just help them, do more in less time.
Okay.
By having a partner working with them.
It's part of this journey and this requirements from your customers is to do Windows 11 as well, to get to Windows 11, right?
Part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they want the foundation like Intune to be able to have the toolings and the...
Dead right. And when we map out a roadmap, there's usually 3 themes to it. It's usually foundation. Let's build a really solid foundation, and I can tell you more about that. Phase 2 is usually, let's adopt this new capability.
Okay.
And phase 3 is usually consolidation and being brave enough to burn bridges and turn off legacy systems and commit to being on this new modern cloud destination.
Right.
So foundation, adoption, consolidation. That's typically what the journey looks like.
So it sounds like you are really pro-cloud, you're really pro-modern.
Absolutely.
Like the future, right?
Absolutely.
You're like, hey, why are we doing legacy? Why are we doing hybrid, right? Which is another...
And some of our clients have to do hybrid. They've got on-prem applications.
Sure.
They've got good reasons why they will have to live in a hybrid world for a while. But it's a transition phase.
Sure.
Right? They will ultimately go all cloud, we see. And we're big advocates for going all cloud, going passwordless, going paperless.
Passwordless.
Passwordless and paperless. And so in our own business, we're a small company, less than 100 people, but we are all cloud, no on-prem, no printers, no passwords.
Are you doing universal print?
We don't do any printing.
No printing?
We just don't print.
Okay.
Why would you print in this day and age? I mean, that's our philosophy. We don't need to print anything. Everything is available on every device.
Right? Yeah.
You sign everything digitally. And
exactly.
We just don't need to print.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So you were talking about, you said you were going to get into a little bit of the foundation stuff. And can you touch on that?
Sure. So typically what we see with most enterprise organizations, we see that they've usually got about 3 endpoint management systems as a starting point. They've probably got SCCM with or without a cloud management gateway. They've probably got a different MDM, like maybe Jamf, very common for the Apple devices.
Oh, Workspace ONE or something like
that. And they've probably got Workspace ONE or AirWatch or whatever it's called this week. And maybe Mobile Iron or something, or MAS 360 for some mobile devices, maybe provided by a telco. And so the first once we've agreed what the roadmap needs to look like, once we get into doing the real work, the first phase is usually not hands-on keyboard at all.
Okay.
It's just agreeing on policies, analyzing the GPOs.
Okay.
Looking at the conditional access policies and hardening those.
Yes.
And figuring out which baselines they want to follow. Is it CIS or is it Microsoft baselines or whatever.
Right.
And just doing some work on policies to figure out how their legacy GPOs and policy will map to the modern world of security policies.
All of those over.
No, not at all. No. But figuring out how we secure the data and the use cases with the modern approach of profile-based management and policies and compliance.
Sure.
So that's usually a starting point, a desktop exercise, architects working together and having some good, healthy debates. And then we see the next phase is usually implementing some of the tooling, getting Intune working, laying down a core set of baselines, getting Autopilot working.
Autopilot?
Yeah.
Okay.
To really streamline the provisioning. And the challenge we see there for some customers is not the technology. Implementing Autopilot, as you know, it's an easy technology project. Changing the business process is immensely more complex. We've got customers where we put in Autopilot just before the pandemic. Guess what they're still doing today, 4 years later?
They're still imaging?
They're still imaging every device. To bring every device to head office, take it out of the box, muck around with it for 90 minutes, put it back in the box and ship it out to some user.
Yeah.
They're not using Autopilot in the way it was designed.
No.
Now, we've got other customers who never see the device. They treat Windows machines like an iOS device. They never see it to deploy it. They never see it to patch it. They never see it to update it. They never see it to re-provision it end of life. It's treated as a mobile OS. So that change around provisioning, that's a big deal. And then we usually see that part of the foundational work is syncing OneDrive so that all the folders and files are put on the device as part of the setup. Obviously, doing the integration with Android, the Android ecosystem, or Knox for Samsung devices.
Samsung Knox,
and then the Apple ecosystem, getting all the plumbing in place. Getting all that in place. That's a project, but it's linear, and most engineers are good at doing those things with the right guidance, and then it's a case of changing business process.
Okay.
So I'd say they're the first two steps: policy and plumbing.
Plumbing, okay.
And then the next major step is usually getting Windows updates happening really well. Windows Updates for Business.
Right. So
deployment rings.
Okay. So is that what you guys are using? Windows Update for Business?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What about Autopatch? Have they started on the Autopatch?
We've seen very few people actually deploy it in production yet.
Okay.
All the components, yes. So we're generating Windows Updates for Business. In some cases, we're using a third party, Patch My PC for third-party applications.
Right.
So we're hanging out for the advanced app management in Intune coming in the spring. We're hanging out for that.
Oh, right.
And then the fact that we can now patch firmware and drivers with Intune.
That's right.
So where we're trying to move all our clients is to a world where their OS, their applications, their firmware, their drivers will all be patched over the air, silently, and fully automated.
What about security and stuff like that? Are you, are you hearing any concerns about security, data, things like that? Or is that something that also is part of your process?
It would be still part of the foundation, would be deploying the endpoint agent.
Okay.
Whether that's, ideally it's Defender. For many customers, it's other products, it's CrowdStrike or whatever.
Whatever, yeah.
And deploying a CERT if they have PKI infrastructure.
Right.
Deploying that out to their managed machines. And then making sure they're pulling back their telemetry into their SIEM, whatever that is. That's still part of the plumbing.
Sure.
Getting the compliance and the reporting working well. And we've got some large customers. We're very lucky. We think we've got one of the largest Intune customers in the world.
Oh, really?
They've got almost 1 million devices on Intune.
Oh, that's incredible.
And I'll tell you a problem that's emerging now, which is super interesting. Intune has a data set. Intune sees a set of devices and signals and all that. Their ServiceNow ITSM has a different view of the world.
Okay.
Right? And then their business is so complex that they've got different compliance requirements that are changing all the time. So the business is constantly asking for reports to show a certain view of risk associated with certain devices or patch levels or OS levels. ServiceNow says this, Intune says that. The business wants something different. And reconciling these data sets at scale and with the frequency at which they change, man, what a challenge. And doing that for 1 million devices.
So that's a challenge.
That's a huge challenge.
That's okay.
And this is where AI and synthesizing the data sets.
I was going to segment into that. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
So I'm really hoping that there will be a way of somehow synthesizing that data set in ITSM or the inventory, the data set that Intune sees, and then what the business might require to meet an audit or a weekly report or a compliance or just address a risk or investigate an incident.
Sure.
But it's like a Venn diagram. How do we bring these circles closer together? I'm hoping AI will help with that.
You are really like on the cutting edge here. It's amazing. So, speaking of AI and CoPilot, we're both here at Microsoft Ignite, and we heard Satya today, right?
He mentioned AI.
Did he really?
He did. I think he might have said CoPilot twice, actually. Yeah.
If that was a drinking game,
he won. Yeah, even as an Irishman, I would have conceded to Satya today. Yeah.
So I was really excited, though. Apart from the jokes, I was really excited to hear all the innovations and the announcements, and he mentioned Microsoft is a CoPilot company. So that is setting, the foundation here of what we can see in the future, right? CoPilot, everybody's going to have CoPilot. Every CoPilot's going to be in everything.
Yeah, you're going to need a CoPilot for all the CoPilots.
Yes, we're going to need CoPilot for the CoPilots, exactly. So how do you see that, taking place in the near future for your organization and also your customers and stuff?
Short, honest answer is we don't know yet. That's part of the reason I'm here, is to try and figure it out. But a couple of things are clear. The integration of CoPilot and Intune and Windows will enable us to make better decisions.
Okay.
So when we're making policy decisions, being able to use CoPilot to say, guide me on this policy, tell me what the impact will be.
Here's my current customer's situation or environment, and here's where they want to go.
And if I hit apply, which devices, which applications, which users, which part of my tenant will be impacted.
Okay.
And thinking about role-based access.
Right.
And how you scope and tag and label and filter the different communities and use cases in your tenant, knowing what this policy is going to do and which scopes and which parts of the organization it's going to hit. And then being able to hopefully use AI to say, write me a brief so I can explain this to the rest of the team.
True.
And put out some comms and say, this is what's going to happen, and this is what the users
this is what's going to happen. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
This is right.
Or if we need to get approval from a change advisory board, and then also troubleshooting complex problems. I'm hoping AI will really make that easier. And then, as I mentioned before, synthesizing different and slightly conflicting data sets.
Right.
To figure out what's what.
Okay.
So there would be 3 off the cuff when I think about CoPilot and the endpoint ecosystem.
Okay.
We think about the endpoint ecosystem, which for us is the combination of the devices, the operating systems, the applications, the user sign-in experience.
Right.
Yeah, that's super important. And then the user's journey. We think of that as the endpoint ecosystem. And we think CoPilot will help with many aspects of that.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, we're going to see some great things coming up, I'm sure.
We have already.
Yeah, we have already, And we are using it internally. It's just phenomenal. There's more things to come and stuff like that.
Yeah, super impressive.
Any parting words? What would you tell, organizations, customers, IT pros, and things like that who are kind of like still, holding back whether to move to Windows 11, to Intune, and to start, incorporating CoPilot and stuff? What would your advice be?
My advice would be get started. Because what's becoming apparent now is that almost every organization has Microsoft 365 in some form, either E3 or E5 or Office plus EMS. So you've probably already paid for Intune.
Yeah.
And so if you're also paying for Jamf or Workspace ONE, that's a tax now you've got on the total cost of ownership for your endpoint ecosystem.
Okay.
You're now paying an unnecessary cost. And if you've got 3 of those, like I said before, if you've got SCCM and Jamf and something else, and you've also paid for Intune, you know, that's
You're just wasting your money,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, you know, my advice to everyone is get started, figure out what are the use cases you could modernize first, and then second and third, and go on the journey. And I like to think of it like a train, and there's the carriages of a train, and you're going to cross over a line, and it might take you 3 years to get all the carriages over the line. Let's pick some use cases, and we can say, from this day forth, every new device, every new application, every new employee who comes in is going to go in the modern configuration.
Exactly.
We're not going to build up more technical debt.
Right.
That has to be migrated later. So all those new users will get an autopilot experience, a
Right.
fully automated patch experience, build experience. Everything will be modern with Windows Hello. And we're getting away from passwords and manual imaging and manual patching, all that for the new people.
For the new people.
And then over time, as we refresh hardware, as people change,
you start moving
things,
people over.
all the trains cross over the line. So eventually we get all those use cases in a modern state.
So I'm going to drop a name. We both know him. He's my colleague, Joe Lurie, and you know him really well too. So we did an instructor-led lab today. And those conversations came up, questions came up about that, especially around autopilot and stuff.
Yep.
So that was the advice that he gave and I gave about, hey, listen, you know, your existing systems, you want to do hybrid? Sure, fine, whatever, right? At least it gets you partway to the cloud.
Yep.
Anything new, please don't do that. Let's get to the cloud.
Yeah.
Let's, you know, get modern, right?
Yeah.
Do Entra ID and all that fun stuff.
Yep.
So exactly what you're saying here. So
can I share with you one story of
Sure.
a great customer story? They had 32,000 employees, very strong position on SCCM, Workspace ONE, whole bunch of legacy. And they had 50 different IT departments. It was an academic medical center.
Okay.
50 different IT departments.
Okay.
Research labs and teams and specific groups. And that was 4.5 years ago. They're now all on Intune. The whole organization, and using ORBAC really well to delegate some policy decision making, some security controls down to individual labs or groups or departments. The way they did it was extraordinary. They spent about 9 months working with us and another partner, 2 other partners, to put together the whole stack of identity, endpoint, data, groups. There were a number of things. And they said, let's design the future experience for one person.
One person.
One person.
Okay.
And they spent 9 months and a couple of $1 million building all this capability. No kidding. It was a couple of $1 million.
Wow.
Building all this capability for one person. That person was the CIO.
Okay.
Okay. So they gave her a new Windows. It was a Surface, whatever at the time.
Sure.
And they had her go see the autopilot experience, get Windows Hello set up.
Yep.
No passwords after that. Her OneDrive content synced to the machine. It started pushing updates and did all the things. And she was like, okay,
I'm sold.
If this works for me, let's plan the rollout for the next 32,000. But they had to prove it for the one person.
To the one person
who was the decision maker.
Yes.
And
exactly.
it was a great approach.
I've never heard of that before. Because usually we're trying to like, you know, whenever you hear, you know, whether partners or IT pros and stuff, it's always like trying to do the masses. But this is a great approach, you know, you convince the decision maker and you prove it that it's going to work, and how it's going to work. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Dennis, amazing. It's been great conversation with you.
Thank you.
You are brilliant. I love it.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you for watching Tackling Tech. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time.